I live in a city with a public transportation system. They have been extremely short-staffed, and more often than not, you have to call to make sure your bus is even coming. On weekdays during business hours, the public transit operator will order a lift for you to get to work if your bus isn't showing up or if they're short a driver. Tuesday, I'm at the bus stop after checking multiple times if my bus is coming, only to find out that it wasn't. They ordered me a lift, and this nice older gentleman was my driver. We had casual conversation, and he was starting to ask personal questions. I'm a bartender, and I'm super friendly already, so I didn't think his questions were ill-intentioned. I told him I'm not married, and I'm pretty much a loner. I basically go to work and then go home and spend time with family. He then says,
I'd marry you in a heartbeat.
Again, I'm just thinking he's being funny or nice. I ask him to drop me at the downtown grocery so I could pick up some things I needed for work. When we stop, he said that he was joking and that he's married and has a son my age. Asked if I was interested in maybe meeting him. Since I have a terrible track record, I figured it wouldn't hurt meeting someone out of my circle and comfort zone, so I gave the man my number and we parted ways. The next morning, he texts me and asked if I needed a ride to work. I told him he didn't have to do that, and I was sure my bus was running. He said that it would be his pleasure and that he'd pick me up at my house at 3 p.m. Then about an hour later, he asked if I wanted to have lunch with him before work. I told him that I was busy and that I couldn't do that. He said,
Okay, see you at 3.
He shows up at 3 and lets me know he's outside. While I'm finishing getting my things together, I open the door and he started to walk up my stairs to my house. I told him I was ready and we could head downtown. When I get in the back seat, he turns around and says that he has a confession. He told me from the time I took off my mask, his heart had danced like a butterfly. He said that he hasn't been able to stop thinking about me since the day before, and that he'd love to spend time with me, and that he'd pay me for my time if I spent the day with him. That's when I started to feel super uncomfortable. The whole ride was making me cringe, but I know when you're in a situation like that with a predator, playing nice is safer than freaking out. He continued on the entire ride about how he loved me at first sight and wanted to make me his Lebanese queen. As we got closer to downtown, I started to feel relief. He dropped me off at my hotel and said,
See you tomorrow.
That evening at work, I checked my phone after a busy happy hour, and he's texted me a couple of times. He sent a picture of the hotel and said that he'd wait for me to get off to give me a ride home. I told him I already had a ride, but thank you anyways. Thursday morning, I'm out running errands with my mom and sister. He texts me and asks how early he can pick me up because he can't stop thinking about me. I ask him to please stop and that I was with family. He continues to text me all day and evening, begging to see me, telling me his heart is aching to see his Lebanese queen. I just kept saying, please stop. Friday morning, the shit hit the fan. He tells me that he loves me no matter what. He tells me that
I told my wife about you,
and that
I'm in love with you and want a divorce.
I told him to please don't do that, and that it wasn't right to treat his wife that way. He said it wasn't my fault, that they were drifting apart anyways. Then he said,
I'm picking you up for dinner at 5:30, and I'm not taking no for an answer.
I ignored the messages during the day and just went about my off day. Around 5:25, my video doorbell rings and he's standing on my porch for at least 15 minutes. I told him I wasn't home and that he should leave. He continues to text me and beg to come pick me up from my parents. I was home the whole time, but was too scared to let him know that. I eventually called the non-emergency police station, but he had already left by the time I got through. I filed a general report, but technically they can't do anything unless he's standing on my porch threatening me. They advised me to report through Lyft, so I did. I haven't heard anything since then, but the shit was just creepy as fuck. On Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022, I had a person come into my job. I work in women's clothing, and it was a customer I'd helped out on 3 occasions over the last 8 months. They said that they were a man with he/him pronouns, but his girlfriend liked it when he dressed up in women's clothing. I didn't find anything wrong with this because I enjoy helping people feel good about themselves. I asked if this was consensual, and he said yes, he enjoyed it too. On this particular day, he came in, this time with a wig and dress on, which again, I found no issue with. In fact, I felt proud of him. He asked for the fitting room once no one was in the store, and asked for my opinion on something he was wearing. I agreed. He opened the fitting room door and was standing there with a blouse on and no pants, but was wearing a pink and white polka-dotted diaper. I was shaken and uncomfortable, but maintained my composure and said the top was cute and turned away. He tried on another outfit and was fully clothed this time, and asked if we had anything shorter because his girlfriend likes it when he gets a pedicure and the lady doing his toes can see his diaper. I grew more and more uncomfortable, but being alone, I didn't say anything other than, "Oh, that's interesting." He asked if we had any long shirts that could be used as a dress, and I said yes and went to fetch them. I came back, and one by one, he came out in tops with his diaper showing, and even told me a story about him peeing himself at a sex store and his girlfriend changing his diaper in front of the employees, who were turned on by this. The discomfort grew and grew until I was shaking and texting my coworker to come in early. He comes out of the fitting room in the dress that he came in with and turned away and acted like he was on the phone, but I noticed it was his calculator instead. I stood there trying to calm down and everything when he comes back and says his girlfriend gave him the task of taking a photo with me in his bra and diaper. I declined and said that I was not okay with that, and he said that it was okay, but that he was going to get a spanking from her later. He left shortly after thanking me for my help, but not purchasing anything, which was a first. I brushed the experience off as a weird occurrence and went on about my day, thinking I wouldn't see him for a few more months again. I went home later that day, and my coworker texted me saying that he was back and doing the same thing to her, but he left again without making a purchase. The next day, I asked my coworker to come in early so I wasn't alone, and she did. He came in again, and I went to the back because I was about to have a panic attack. I felt sexually harassed simply just looking at him and picturing the look he had when he was just staring at me in the diaper. I overheard him asking my coworker my name and when I would be working again. She didn't give him either, and he left after making a purchase on a blouse he tried on the day before. My coworker told me he identifies as she, which threw me off since it contradicted what he told me the day before. At this point, I filed a report with the police. I genuinely think that this is a ploy to traffic me. An officer comes to talk to me, and I tell him everything. The next day, I was off work, and I get a call from my coworker saying he drove by looking into the store, and when my coworker caught him staring, he drove away. I went to the police station since I had to drop off my statement and inform them on what happened. The next day, I opened the store and had to go by the bank. When I was driving to the bank, I noticed his truck outside an auto parts store. I called the investigator and told him about this, and he got a tag number and noticed that he had a sticker for a local campsite that expires Monday. It's February. Who the fuck is camping in February by a lake? All in all, I feel good knowing more about him than he knows about me. I know his name, where he works, and that he's got a campsite until Monday. I didn't see him yesterday or today, but I'm hoping he got the message that he scared the fuck out of me. I'll keep you updated as this goes on. Edit. For context, I'm a 25-year-old female. I'm 5'2". The person discussed in this post is about 6'5", 350 pounds. Late 30s, mid 40s. Hopefully this will help shed some light on why I was worried to call this person out on their shit while I was alone. Thank you to everyone who's given advice thus far. I appreciate it more than y'all know. Update. He came in today while I was working, and the cops were called. He's been banned from the store, and if he comes back, he will be arrested. If anything else happens, I'll be sure to post it here. Thank you for reading and giving words of encouragement. I appreciate it more than you could ever understand. I'm proud to have stood my ground today for my store and my employees. No one should ever have to go to work and be in fear for the sake of customer service. Fuck any creep who utilizes customer service as a way to sexually harass people who just want to put food on the table. Again, I thank each of you so much. So this is a story from around 10 years ago. I was 16 to 17 at the time, but I recently discovered this sub and it instantly brought these memories flooding back to me. At the time, I kind of just brushed it off because nothing bad ended up happening to me and put it down to, I guess shit just happens to you when you're a woman walking alone at night. But looking back now, I realize how creepy it really was. I was coming home on my own on a Thursday night after being out at a pub with some friends. We had been out a little more centrally in the city, so I had to take a bus on my own to get home to my residential neighborhood. I had done this route hundreds of times, so I didn't see it as being particularly dangerous, especially as I live in a fairly nice neighborhood. It was only about 11 p.m., but because I lived in a residential area, and it was in the middle of a working week, when I got off the bus at my stop, it was absolutely dead and there was no one around. Again, this didn't spook me, particularly as it was only about a 5 to 10 minute walk from the bus stop to my house. As I turned down a long residential street that leads towards my house, I noticed a guy walking further down the street. This put me a little on edge, but I was reassured by the fact that he had his back to me and was walking away from me down the street. As I kept walking down the street, I noticed the guy turned around and clocked me. That's fine, I thought. I always turn around when I hear someone walking behind me at night, so nothing weird about that. But I noticed as we got further and further down the street, he kept doing it. He kept checking if I was still walking in the same direction as him. At this point, I'm starting to get pretty freaked out, particularly as I'm painfully aware that we are the only two people around. Just as I was weighing up what I should do, he turned down the path of one of the houses to our right, and I breathed a sigh of relief. He's going into his house. I was just being paranoid the whole time. The houses in my area are terraced with front doors being kind of embedded into an enclave at the front of the house. What this means is that from where I was standing, about 50 feet away, I couldn't actually see the front door of the house, as it was obscured by the wall. However, I saw him walk down the path and disappear into the front door enclave, so my logical conclusion was that he was letting himself into his house. I can't describe exactly what made me feel like this, but after that initial feeling of relief wore off, I suddenly got this really bad feeling, so I stopped walking and just stood there. There was this tiny voice in my head that said, "What if he's just faking you out?" The feeling became so strong that I stepped off the pavement and ducked down behind a parked car and just waited. After a couple of minutes of crouching behind the car, staring at the house, I saw movement and my heart stopped. The man came back down the path, out onto the street, and was looking around, looking for me. He must have been waiting for me in the doorway, knowing that if I kept walking, I wouldn't see him until it was too late. Unfortunately for him, his hiding place also meant that he couldn't see me. So when I didn't walk past as he anticipated, he had to come back out into the street and try to work out where I was. Looking back now, I probably should have called the police at this point, but as a scared teenager, my fight or flight brain took over, and I sprinted down one of the roads, running perpendicular to the street that we were on, as I knew I could use it to take a slightly longer route home. I didn't stop running until I got home, where I quickly double-locked the door behind me. Amazingly, I didn't even think to wake anyone in my family up. I literally just went to bed and woke up the next morning and went to school. I dread to think what would have happened if I hadn't just suddenly got a bad feeling and stopped walking. Part of me thinks that on some subconscious level, my brain must have registered not hearing the front door shut after the man had approached it, and therefore triggered an alarm in my head. But I had no perception of this at the time. Lesson learned: trust your gut.